Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Bloom. I am extremely excited to bring you all our next guest. I want you all to have all of your questions ready and loaded because, again, this time is for you. I'm so excited because one of the reasons why I wanted to have our next guest on is because I've spoken with a lot of women, and many women can agree that we don't know as much as we would like to about how to manage our finances. And our next guest is definitely the person to ask. So, our next guest, Jocelyn Wright, she's the founder and managing partner of the Acension Group, and she works with her clients to develop a personalized strategy. She's a strong advocate for creating opportunities for women and people of color in the personal and financial planning profession. And in 2016, Investment News magazine recognized her as one of the top 20 most influential women to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual stage, Jocelyn Wright.
Thank you.
Yes. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am good. Can't complain. The sun is shining and looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so everyone watching, thank you all again for attending today. I want to ask you two questions, and I want you to check in and let us know your thoughts. So the first question is, how confident do you feel in managing your finances yourself? On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to send us a message in the chat box and just let us know. And if you are married or currently partnering with someone else on your personal finances, also, let us know if you currently play an active role in managing your finances. So, if you can go ahead and check in with us and let us know what your thoughts and what scale you feel like you fall in between in the chat box, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So, Jocelyn, again, thank you for being here. And can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a financial advisor, certified financial planner. And what I do is work with clients to help them make smart choices about their money. So, it's determining what their values are and then setting that in line with what their financial goals and objectives are. And it's really, helping create a plan. I'm like the personal, like you would have a personal trainer. I'm that to your finances, if you could see it that way. I'm here to hold you accountable for what it is that you say you want to do as it relates to your finances.
Awesome. So, can you also tell us what inspired you to get into this field? Did you grow up having conversations about finances at home, or what motivated you to actually choose this field? Because I know you've been doing this for a long time, almost over 20 years of experience. It's amazing.
Yes, but no, I did not grow up, having these conversations in my family. It's sort of, I won't say the typical, like most families, and I can only speak from Black families' perspective. That's not something we talked about around the table. But growing up in the 70s, and I say this all the time, I was a child of board games. So that's what we did growing up. So, it was a game of life and Monopoly. So I loved being the banker, being able to count money and, organize money. And my dad was an entrepreneur. So he had two businesses and they were largely cash-based businesses. So of course he would bring home the receipts every night. And then when I got up, can I organize the money? Can I count the money? So that was my thing. I love to do that. And my sisters will tell you that kind of marrying the finance with the organization. I used to carry around this white church pocketbook. And I would take my parents' church envelopes and just kind of organize them. So, organizing receipts. So it was like a happy marriage between the two. But, I really thought that I was going to go into banking. So work at a bank because, that's where the money is. But it wasn't until the spring of my sophomore year when my dad's mom passed away. And she had a very small, just a $5,000 life insurance policy. And, knowing that was not nearly enough, even in 1990, to, bury someone. And being in, I'm from Philadelphia, we lived in Philly, and then taking her body down south for burial, it's like you had two services. And, just kind of do the math. Taking a large family from Philly to the South to bury them, that cost more than $5,000. So I'm sure my father and his siblings had to come up with whatever difference that is. And that just struck me as, why didn't we know better? Why didn't grandma have more than $5,000 in life insurance. And so at that point is kind of when I turned my attention to personal finance and really started, understanding about budgeting and things like that. In addition, when I was in college, I worked for credit card companies, first in customer service and then in collections. So being able to see how people were, getting into trouble, not really understanding the terms and conditions of their credit card, wondering why I'm paying this minimum payment and I don't see my balance going down. It was like, well, when you only make the minimum payment, you're only benefiting the credit card company, not you. You'll be paying interest for forever. So really learning about that and seeing how that's not something that we're taught, whether it's in elementary school or even in college. Those are fundamental things that I think should be in a curriculum at all levels to some degree, an increasing degree, because those are the things that we will be using when we get out. I'm not saying, I'm sure people will agree with me that our educational curriculum can change. And there are some things that need to be incorporated that are not, that would be fundamentally important to students as they graduate and become adults.
I can 100% agree to you. I remember when I was in high school, the one thing that I learned was how to write a checkbook, but I didn't know how to balance it. I didn't know how to, pay my credit card. I just did not have that financial discipline. So a lot of the experience that I even had was just through trial and error, and then you learn, you have bad habits, and then you mess up and you almost have to start all over again. And it takes like 7 years for this stuff to fall off your credit. So I love that you're having these conversations so we can change future generations and teach our children different. So that's amazing. And then one thing I wanted to mention also for everyone that's tuning in, if you go on Jocelyn's website, the Acension group, you'll see she has all types of interactive calculators. And one in particular that I love that you have is the amortization calculator. Can you tell everybody a little bit more about that and what that is?
So that is, when you have a loan, they will tell you the amortization is, how you will pay it off. So just take a car loan, for instance. If it's a 4-year loan, so 48 months, it will tell you if you put in what your interest rate is, how many payments, you can see how the balance goes down over time. Now, this is the interesting part. I told you that I worked in collections when I was in college. This is for a loan, like a fixed loan that you have a set end date, like a certain number of payments. Once you make them, if you make them on time, then the balance would be zero, like your mortgage or car loan, or even your, a student loan. But credit cards is where it gets tricky because that is revolving debt. So it's not as if you can say, I buy something today and I make 12 payments or whatever, that if I make this minimum payment, it'll be gone. That's not the case. If you ever, if you pay attention to your paying off your credit cards, you'll see that they'll have a minimum payment. And then each month, if you just make that minimum payment is going to go down each month, assuming that you don't make any other charges. So it's really hard to pay it off. And as a result of the 2008 financial crisis and the reforms that they made to the credit card industry, on your credit card statement, you will see there's a section that says if you only make the minimum payment, how long it would take you to pay it off. And before that, it was just, your guess was as good as mine, how long it would take you to pay it off. But now the credit card companies are required to put that information on your credit card statement.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Oh, I want to check in with some of our audience members. I see Crystal Chanel. You said you feel like you're at a 6. Crystal Yvonne, excuse me. You feel like you're at a 6 as far as managing your finances. They're not shared as of yet. Kim Townsend said you feel like you're at a 7. You're married and you play an active role. And then we have D. Black Newton. Thank you so much for being here. And then also Amir. So hello, family.
Hello.
You're mentioning so many great points. And I was reading an article right before we came to have this discussion today. And it said 9 out of 10 women, will become the sole decision maker in their household because of the death of their spouse or divorce. And it's a tough topic that a lot of times we don't want to talk about, but it also stresses the importance of us playing an active role and raising our financial IQ and partnering with people like you.
Exactly. And I've done a seminar. It's been a long time before I've done, but I say it quite often, as much for those, for those in your audience who are in relationships, whether it's long-term relationships or marriages, I caution women, a man is not a plan. So I have, unfortunately seen a lot of situations where women who are, in their 60s and 70s, who have lost their spouses, because of, and I'm talking just death, so they've been married for forever and just really at a loss. They don't know where the checkbook is, because he handled everything. And so in addition to grieving the loss of their life partner, it is, well, what do I do financially? I don't know how much is coming in or going out. I've never, balanced the checkbook. Now that is a mentality that, some of the older women in our lives, may have done. But I also see too, where a lot of women, even in, the younger generation, will give that responsibility over to their partner. And the couple dynamics, that's unique for each couple. But what I would say, and there's always, even for the couples that I work with, there's always one who is, let me get this information to you, and that's fine. But what I always make sure of in those cases is checking in with that non-dominant spouse. You know what I mean? So just making sure that they understand that in most cases it is the woman, because of statistically, women outlive men. So there will be a period of time, not even factoring in divorce, where she will be solely responsible for her finances. So making her feel comfortable that in the event, if something were to happen, that she knows what's going on, or at least will feel comfortable picking up the phone and saying, hey, Jocelyn, help me understand this. And, we've established a relationship. It's not as if I've always been working with the husband and she doesn't know that she's part of, she doesn't say, oh, that's my husband's financial planner versus that's our financial planner. And I think a lot of financial planners, that's what they want to do. And as we look at making sure more women are having a seat at the table and a part of that, that's what you want your financial planner to be doing, is making sure that you have that relationship with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're mentioning the term financial planner, and I want to just, if you could break it down just for us a little bit deeper. Can you tell us the difference between what a financial planner is versus a financial advisor? And where does the certification come into play, and why is that important?
Sure. So a financial advisor is a very broad term. People who may sell insurance, focus on investments, may call themselves a financial advisor. And, a financial planner is a type of financial advisor, but you are focusing on, really looking at the client's entire financial picture. So it's not as if you are, just doing one thing. You want to, put a plan together. Make sure that you're looking at their cash flow as well as their insurance, retirement planning, estate planning. Now, speaking for myself, I'm not an accountant or a CPA or an attorney, so I don't specifically do those things. I will, work with their existing CPA or attorney, or refer them to someone and make sure that we have the right people, around the table to give the advice where appropriate. But a financial planner will be looking to incorporate everything into one comprehensive plan, because we know, one thing can affect another, and you want to make sure all of those things are coordinated. And in terms of the certification, it's the Certified Financial Planner certification, or CFP. That's sort of the most well-known certification in this space. And, you go through an educational process, and then you take a test to get the designation. And there's also an experience requirement. So you have to have a number of years of experience before you can even publicly use the certification. And now, fortunately, you can actually, there are undergraduate programs where you can get a degree in financial planning. So perhaps if that were available when I was an undergrad, I may have gone that route, but that wasn't something that was available, because this profession is still relatively new if you look at other professions like attorneys and CPAs, which have been around for, decades upon decades, where it's just kind of late 60s, early 70s is where you've seen the first CFP. So it's still a relatively new profession. And, I want to hopefully am a spokesperson to not only encourage more people to, look at this as a viable career opportunity, but specifically women and people of color.
Oh, absolutely. Especially how you mentioned about, making sure this is an opportunity for women and people of color, but just looking at you and all of the impact that you've had over the last decade, 2 decades, it's amazing. And then also, I was also reading that only 31% of financial planners are women. So a lot of times, if you can't see it, like they always say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. But being able to see someone like you in the field actually doing the work and in the forefront as a business owner, I'm sure inspires a ton of people. So
And
that's
just a
amazing.
slight correction on that figure of
Uh-huh.
certified financial planners, women only make up 23% of that.
Oh my goodness.
And Black people, Latina, or Black people, there are less than 5%, certified financial planners. So there, kind of depends on how you look at it. Glass half full, glass half empty. I'm choosing half full. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there, especially if you look at the changing demographics in the country, and that, you have a lot of people of color who are, have college degrees, are earning more than some of our parents and grandparents did. So the need for this advice is very important. And we want to make sure that there are enough people who look like them to be able to serve them. I'm in no way saying that, as a Black woman, I only want to work with a Black woman, but we know that there's there's something real about people having shared experiences and having a comfort level. And so your financial planner can be as smart as a whip, but if you can't feel like I can talk to them, I can take them advice, it's really, what's the point? You really want to have that connection and build that relationship with someone. And if it's because they're a woman or because they, are another Black person, then that's where it goes.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate to that. I'm sure other people can as well. So can you tell me a little bit about your investment philosophy? And is it important for clients to partner with a financial advisor or planner that shares their same investment philosophy?
So when I saw that question, I was like, oh, okay. That it's important, but at the same time, I don't put a whole lot, that's not the core of our relationship, because that's one aspect of the relationship that I don't control. I have no control about what the markets will do. So while I do, talk to the client to find out what their tolerance for risk is, because that's going to help us determine what investment choices we make. That is sort of the main thing. I don't want to assume that they're, willing to take a lot of risk where they're just like, hey, if I put $2 in, I want to see $2, so it's kind of how you manage all of that. So from that standpoint, you need to be on the same page as far as that's concerned. But, for things that are out of both of our controls, I don't want to make that the center point of the client relationship, because I don't want you to judge me on a financial market and I can't dictate whether it goes up or down. The whole purpose of working together is to make sure, regardless of what's happening in the financial markets, that you're still okay.
Absolutely. Tracy Harris said shared experience is very important. She said great advice on that. And Tammy Clark wants to understand a little bit more about how much it costs on average to get financial advisor services. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, and when someone's financially ready to actually hire a financial advisor or planner?
Sure. One thing what I'll say is I say it depends a lot. It's not because I'm a Libra. It's just, it really depends. Because you'll have planners and professionals that have a very, a range of fees. One, it could depend on how long they've been practicing. And two, it could be on what they're doing. One thing that I'm glad to see is that the different type models are changing, so that as a consumer, you can, work with someone who may not necessarily charge you a fee for their services to put a plan together, but could potentially, where they're compensated is there's a commission if you have, if you need a product, whether it's, buying an investment, or if you need insurance, that type of thing. So they may get compensated because of the products that you buy. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it could be you just charge a flat fee. So it is whatever, and some, they have what are called subscription models where they may charge you a monthly fee. That's not to say that you're meeting every month, but to make it, a more palatable and easier, way to cover their charges, you pay them every month. And you may meet, once or a few times a year, or certainly when something happens. And then, there are some very high-end planners that charge, tens of thousands. But of course, all of that would depend on what the client has. So that is a great question that you would ask any prospective professional that you're working with. How are you compensated? How do you charge your fees?
Thank you so much, Tammy, for asking that question. Can you also, Lynn, tell us a little bit more about asset allocation and what exactly does a balanced portfolio look like? I know a lot of people invest in real estate, which I would assume that's a smart decision, but should we create more diversity in our portfolio? What advice do you normally give in that area?
So again, it depends.
It depends. Okay, it depends.
It's really, you look at not only what the client has, what they're trying to do. So, and if you're, say, for instance, for most people, they're looking at retirement. And so depending on what age they are and when they want to retire, you would then assess what is the best mix of investments for them to have. So how much in equities or stocks, and those are the, companies that you own, and then how much in fixed income or bonds that you might have. And real estate can be a part of that portfolio. And I know for a lot of people, kind of real estate is sexy because that's something, especially like if you're buying residential property, that's something you can see. Whereas owning a share of stock or a bond, that's not tangible to you per se. Like you would have to look at your statement or your account statement to see how much you own, but you can look at, oh, I own this house on XYZ Main Street. Those are different things. And so there's a lot of interest to that. But with everything, there needs to be some level of caution and understanding, how much risk are you taking, and just really understanding what you're getting into. That's the main thing. And so it's not as if everybody, because, we may be the same age or our situations may look similar, that we would have the exact same asset allocation. It really depends on what you're trying to do. And, from a balanced portfolio perspective, normally you would see something, if you're just strictly talking stocks, bonds, and cash, like 60% in stocks or 40% in bonds, somewhere in between that range and vice versa is where you would say balance. But everyone is going to be different. And it's important that you have that conversation if you're working with someone to know how long you're going to have that money invested and when you're going to need it.
Okay, awesome.
It changes over time.
Okay, awesome. So what I'm getting from that also is it depends on obviously your age and then your goals as well. Right. That will give you a better outlook of where you stand financially and decisions that you need to make. Okay.
Right, because I'll have people that say, okay, say now it's tax time. People are getting their refunds or what have you. Like, oh, Jocelyn, I have, X amount of money. I want to invest it. It's like, well, hold on. I hate to be the killjoy, but I have to be the voice of reason. One, I'm not going to take your money and say, okay, great, let's invest it. I'm going to ask you as a planner, well, do you have an emergency reserve? Do you have money set aside that if something happened that you could go to without having to go into debt or needing to borrow from a loved one or family member? Do you have credit card debt? How expensive is that credit card debt? So these are things that, you kind of take that big picture view before you say, okay, I want to go and invest. That's what I have to tell people a lot of times. Like, I'm not going to do that because if you don't have those things set up, you're likely going to call me when something happens wanting cash from your account when there could be a downturn in the market. And it's, you've taken a loss and now you have to actually realize that loss because you need to withdraw the money. But if you'd had, an emergency reserve in place, then you wouldn't have had to touch this money. So those are all of the things that a planner, even an advisor is going to should talk to you about.
I love that. And I'm sure people can appreciate your honesty too. It's so rare that you work with somebody in business and they can say, no, I don't want to take your money just yet. Let's just look at this and see what you can do to save this and keep this and, and repurpose it. So I
Right.
think that speaks volumes about you and the type of company that you run as well. So can you help us break down and get a basic understanding what are stocks, what are bonds, mutual funds, and how do they differ for people who may not have invested in those avenues before?
Sure. Well, stocks is ownership. So that they also call that equity. So, look at larger companies or those that are most widely recognized. So your Facebooks, your Googles, look at stores that you may shop in, Macy's, Target, those sorts of things. Those are companies that you can actually buy a share of ownership in. So those, that's stocks. And then bonds are, that's called fixed income. You may hear that too. And that's where you're actually loaning money to these companies. So you look at it that way. So you don't have an actual ownership stake, but you have loaned them money and they in turn have to pay you interest just as you would to a bank. And where the mutual funds come into play is basically that's a basket of all of those things together. So while you, for instance, like Google is if you wanted to buy a share of Google, that may cost maybe too much for you, but you may get a mutual fund that has Google in it. So you still have ownership in it. And so you look at mutual funds as a basket of stocks or bonds or some combination of the two. So a lot of people now are invested in the market through mutual funds. Because if you have a 401k or 403b at your job, you're likely not buying individual stocks and bonds. You're invested using mutual funds. And so those are typically how a lot of people are invested. But now, because of technology and just how things have changed over the years, you have a lot of these companies where you can buy even what are called fractional shares. So you may not be able to buy a full share, but you can buy like a half a share or some fraction of that. So, just a few weeks ago, we were hearing about what was going on with Robinhood and GameStop and all of that. That's because now technology has really closed the gap on allowing, the small investor to be able to get into the market with a smaller amount of money, because it was previously was looked at as something that just wealthy people did. But no, we all can, purchase and buy stocks and bonds now with,
Okay.
with just your cell phone.
I had no idea about the microshares. Did anyone else know anything about that? Let us know in the comment box. I had no idea about that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I
Sure.
know also on your company Facebook page, since the pandemic hit, you've been sharing tons of tips and things like that to help us, make smarter financial moves and even just, cope with the times that are happening now with people having lots of jobs. So I definitely appreciate you for doing that as well.
Yeah,
And
when the pandemic first started and we were on lockdown, I was just concerned because I knew that, like with most things, how they say when America catches a cold, Black people catch pneumonia, not knowing how long it would last and seeing what having gone through 2008 and the financial impact and the hit that it was to the Black community, I was thinking, okay, people are losing jobs. How is that going to affect Black people? How is it going to affect women? And as we've seen now, as we were talking earlier, we're 12 months in and we know that women of color have been the hardest hit during this time. I think it was in December that they were kind of phrasing this as a she session, so that most people who lost their jobs have been women. In December were women, and we don't know what that kind of comeback is going to look like. Will these women get back into the workforce, or are they going to be permanently displaced from the workforce? Because we know that there are some businesses that are not returning. So there's going to be a whole thing of how do we recover from this? And I wanted to be able to do something. And, the only kind of thing that I can think of was give them, get information out there, have people that specialize in certain areas come and, just share what's important. So really, even sharing information about the various stimulus packages that have come out, the Paycheck Protection Plan, how businesses can, get through this time. We've seen a lot of businesses who've been able to pivot and, many are even thriving, but that's not the case for everyone. So, how do we just share as much information as possible so that people know what's out there and are able to take advantage of it? Because we know the people who are in power and who have money, they're going to find a way. But it's typically those that are kind of in the middle or below, who don't know what's going on, don't have access to the resources and information that's so important, especially now.
Absolutely. It's been terrible and very sad to see even small businesses shutting down since this pandemic. And even, like you said, women, a lot of them are staying at home because a lot of schools are closed. So, financially it's affecting us, and it affects our amount of retirement income that we receive in the future. So I
Exactly.
definitely
Well, we know that
appreciate
we
that.
were already behind prior to the pandemic. So, what is it going to take to kind of even make up for what the year that we've lost? That still is to be written, and we'll see in the months and years to come what that impact is going to be ultimately.
Absolutely. Can you give us an understanding of how a financial advisor or financial planner can help cut expenses for a client and save us money? Is that even possible?
So again, just to make it simple, I equate it to like being someone's personal trainer. So if I'm your
Mm-hmm.
financial trainer, you come to me with where you are and you say, Jocelyn, these are the things that I want to do. So based on what I know, and that knowing is you give me all of your financial information, I'm going to do an assessment and make recommendations on that. And so the only thing I can do is assess and make recommendations. You as the client, it's up to you to implement. And, I can
Mm,
give you words of encouragement, check in, help keep you motivated, but you really are the one who is going to make sure that it gets done. So, in terms of cutting expenses, I'll go through and look at where you've been spending your money and say, hey, did you realize that you're spending X percentage of your take home pay on this item? And for some people, because, especially if, you're, I won't even say we just live in check to check, but because when the money's there, a lot of times we just spend and we don't, necessarily go back and see where we're spending our money. But when you go back and look like, oh, I didn't know I was spending that much money on going out. Now, granted, a lot of expenses have changed because of the pandemic, but prior to, we were just swiping and going.
mm-hmm.
But never really looked at how much we were spending where. So you work with someone who can help you look at, did you know like 25% of your salary you're spending in entertainment or, whatever the case may be. And a lot of times that will change behavior. But, as the client, you ultimately will, it's up to you to implement. We can only do but so much.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. But like you said, having someone to actually look at your finances and actually tell you where you're losing money or spending too much is very helpful. Because I remember probably about 5 years ago, I went through my personal finances, and when I have cash on me, I want to hold it. I want to keep it. But a lot of times, and let me know, everybody that's watching, if you can relate, but when you have a card, like you said, Lynn, you just swipe. And
Yeah.
going through our personal finances and seeing areas that we were just like overspending, and you add it up over years, it's just like, look how much money you're losing
Right.
because you're just on autopilot with your finances. So,
And a lot of times that's not one of the things. I created this. It's like a 3-part set curriculum. It's called Debt Boot Camp, and in one of the
mm,
sessions, one part of it, we go through and look at where we're spending our money. And then the challenge that I do at the end is it's anywhere between 2 weeks of just only spending cash, like not spending on your credit cards. It's kind of a plastic fast, so to speak, and it's because of that same reason. We know that when we have cash in our hands, just like when we were little, if your parents or somebody gave you money, you were going to hold on to that money.
yes.
And then even when it came down to spending, you're like, do I really need this? You're like, no. So we can take advice from children. It's how we spend our cash, because they will
Hmm.
spend our money very fast. But when it comes to their own, like, oh no, they suddenly understand the difference between waiting and having to have it right now. But, that's one of the things, because with the cash, you can see it, it's tangible, you're looking at it. So when you're down to your last, $20 or $50, what have you. And so what I will do, I typically use my card for most things. And that's also because then you have a record. If you go back and look, you see where you're spending money. But even with cash, when I take money from the machine, I will normally write on the back of the ATM card, the ATM receipt, like where I spent the money. So if I took out 100, the back of my receipt should tell me where I spent that money. Because one thing is, when you are spending cash, you really don't know where it's going if you don't get receipts. And so you can really be, just spending in places and not knowing where that money's going.
That is a great tip. I'm going to start doing that.
Mhm.
I am definitely going to start doing that. So I want to switch gears a little bit. You
Sure.
have a bit. You're definitely an athlete, Lynn. A lot of people may not know that. That's here on this chat group. But I want to also mention that you ran a half marathon in every single state, plus Washington D.C. That is absolutely amazing.
Thank
What
you.
inspired you to do that?
Well, I have been pretty active and fit most of my life. I was a tomboy growing up. And so I lived in Houston from 2008, 2001, to about 2000 to about 2008 or 9. So, and Houston, the weather, you're from the South, you live in the South, so the weather is good a lot. So you can get out most often during the year. But then when I moved back home to Philadelphia and had to deal with winter and being a couch potato, I was just like, no, we can't have this. We can't have this. It's like either somebody's shrinking my pants or something's happening. So that was a no bueno. That was not going to happen. And I started running again and I became very much involved with the new running group that had just started called Black Girls Run.
Mm.
And, being in one of their lead ambassadors required me to always be at the event. So that kept me accountable. And after a few years, started running half marathons and then found out about this 50 states challenge. And so you could do half marathons or marathons. I chose the halves.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for something to do leading up to my 50th birthday. And so, I had planned it out to finish when I turned 50, but I met a lot of great people and, I met a soror of mine, and she was doing it too, but she was ahead of me, like 2 years ahead of me. So I was doing a lot of races with her. And so instead of finishing in 2020, I finished in 2018, which now that I did, I'm so thankful because I would have had my plan hijacked by COVID and I wouldn't have finished
Oh.
time. So I finished 2 years early, but that was a blessing.
Lynn, I'm telling you, I look at you and I'm just like inspired by all the great work that you're doing. And even like at 50, it's sometimes so hard for me to even fathom that you're 50. You look phenomenal. Like
Thank
seriously.
you. Good
Yes.
genes. Good genes. Mom, dad.
Yes.
Good genes.
Yeah. Your mom is definitely beautiful too. So let me ask you another question. So as a business owner and an athlete, what motivates you to keep pushing and just giving your best and challenging yourself every day?
I kind of, it's always, I know that the best is yet to come. So, I've done some, a lot of good things, but I know that there is so much more to do and to accomplish, and not just so much to do personally, but just the impact that I can have in the profession, in creating opportunities for new people to come in, hopefully being a role model that young girls or young people of color can see. And I won't just say young, but just people of color can see as, hey, I never even thought of doing that, because I didn't grow up with a financial advisor or planner in my family. So it's just to be a good example as much as I can. I don't have all the answers. One thing that I always, that I tell all the time, I graduated from undergrad. Thank you, Lottie. I was not the best student in college. I was a great student in high school, but I didn't have to, do a lot, but in college, that whole transition and study habits and all of that, it was, thank God I finished. I had to go back to grad school to prove to myself that I was a good student. So, just seeing that there is opportunity and that, you can always do better. And so really what I want to do is make a difference in the lives of my clients and other people, and have as much positive impact as I can, but I don't have it all together. People say, oh, you're a financial planner. You probably have an 850 credit score. No, I don't. No, I don't. I may know how to get there, but at the end of the day, I'm human. So I don't always make the best choices with my money. I stumble, but, kind of dust yourself off and get back on track and, kind of keep going. So it really is to be an example, especially to women and Black women, because I know that we have to deal with so much in terms of taking care of family and community, and that in many cases, the profession is not set up to support our particular demographic and knowing what some of the challenges that we face. So having that level of understanding and perspective is important when I'm working with my clients. And I largely work with Black women.
That is amazing. I definitely, I know you're making a difference. I show my daughter, pictures of you, to see you, out there doing great things. And even to be in a season where we have the first woman vice president of the United States. I
Yeah.
group all of you amazing women together, honestly, and it's inspirational to me. It's inspirational to my daughter. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for putting yourself out there, because, like you said, it is not easy to be an entrepreneur, to
Mhm.
be a woman of color, sitting in rooms where you're probably the only one. But you do it every day, and we're so grateful for you that you push through and you've made such a huge impact. So I want to ask you another question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone wanting to reach financial freedom and create generational wealth, what would it be?
Have a plan. I
Have a
mean, you
plan.
can't just kind of wish it or hope that it will happen. We have to plan for it. So,
Yeah.
and it is one day at a time, but without a plan, it's just, it's just a dream. And so to really see it come together, we have to, put it in writing, and knowing that even when you have a plan, it's not set in stone. It will change because life changes, different things happen. But really, think about what it is you want to have happen, and then start putting things in place to make that happen.
Amazing. Debbie says you're Jenna's role model as well. Aw.
Thank you too.
That's so sweet. Um, Again, I really want to thank you for being here. My intent was to try to create a safe space where women could talk about finances and, just like you said, raise their financial IQ. And you are 100% the perfect person to come on our Bloom platform and to share your experience and your knowledge. So for that, again, I'm forever grateful, because I know you have a very busy schedule.
Always have
And I
time.
want, I'm sorry.
I said I always have time for family.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. So can you tell everyone how they can get in contact with you if they have additional questions, or if they would like to, continue this conversation?
Sure. Well, my website is ascensionwealth.com. So you can go there and send an email. And if you want to, you can, I schedule a complimentary 15-minute conversation. So if you want to schedule a phone consultation, we can do that. On Facebook, the website is the Acension Group. So you can find me on Facebook. And now that you mentioned that, I have been thinking about and kind of going back and forth in terms of creating, finding some way to kind of create a community specifically for women to talk about, money and finances, like in a space that is, kind of no judgment. And as I said before, I know a lot of people think, oh, because I'm a financial planner, I'm going to come with the judgy. And I say it when I do presentations and seminars, that we all leave the judgment at the door. Like, I've seen everything from A to Z and in between, and have, even experienced some things and challenges personally. So, just to be able to talk about what it is that we're dealing with financially, and how do we get to what accomplish our goals. And everyone's goal is going to be different. Some people might be, I want to be able to retire at X age and have this, amount of income. And some people just, look, I want to get my first home, but how can we create community to be able to support one another in doing that? So kind of thinking about what makes sense. I know a lot of it is on social media and different things, but as I figure that out, I'll definitely keep you and your audience in mind, and let you know when I figure out what's the best platform to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Please definitely let us know. I will be there tuning in. Like you said, finances is definitely part of the wellness capsule that we try to talk about here as well. Because I know when I'm not feeling financially empowered, I feel
Mm-hmm.
down. I feel sad.
Yeah.
That does not make me happy. So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that we have you, that we can, come and talk to and learn tips and things like that from. And all of our Bloom listeners, I am so grateful, and I thank you all for being here today and asking questions and taking the next step, whether it's your first or your seventh step, towards creating a better financial life for yourself and for your children. And I thank you all for sharing your honest experiences. And if we can do anything else for you here at Bloom, please feel free to send me a message. I consider myself a bridge of information for all of you all. So I try to bring you only the best people, and Lynn is definitely at the top of the list. So I thank you again for being here, and I love you dearly, and keep doing great things.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
You too.